Folks are coming on. That's good. Welcome. I see Alan, Aubrey, Audrey, Bridget. Thanks for joining us. So we can actually get started um, as folks join on. So, they can just enter our webinar. And I want to introduce myself since there's a good amount of folks on the line now. Hello, I'm Violet. I'm one of the representatives here with Lead Squared, a senior account executive. I'll be going through some of our housekeeping rules at first, and we'll go ahead and jump onto the webinar. We have a really great webinar today. I had a few moments to meet our panelists, and really, even though I've met Adam before, get a chance to talk to Carrie and Kari. You have really valuable expertise at your disposal. I would say we're going to give you the opportunity to ask questions as well. Take advantage of this, but I want to get started with some housekeeping rules. So if you don't mind, you might already get muted by our system, but just mute yourself just for the duration of the webinar. You see some instructions on here with the settings to change your audio or adjust your volume. We want your input. We want to make it a conversation where the attendees, our panelists, myself, we get to learn from this experience. So we'll also have polls that will pop up on the screen. We're asking for you to submit your answers. This will allow us to really hone in on those topics and your answers. And as well, feel free to comment in the chat. For the questions, please use the chat function and we'll answer them during our Q&A session, or we can also follow up with you via email after the webinar. So yeah, I do see some people still getting on here. That's great. Again, folks, I'm Violet with Lead Squared, VO Violet. Call me either one, but don't call me late for dinner. I had to say that, guys, because I will only use that once every 10 years. I do want to introduce you. Actually, I'm going to allow our panelists to introduce themselves. They have an incredible resume in higher education. Just again, hearing from them before we got on this call, they have a lot of expertise in what we're about to talk about today. So I'm going to let Carrie, who's on the left screen here, introduce herself, and we'll go with Kari and then Adam. If you all would give yourselves a small intro, let your attendees know who you are. Again, I know that you have a lot to share today, a lot of expertise, but please boast on yourself because you're here for that reason. You have a lot of background that is going to help us with today's topic. So I'll let you take it away, Carrie.
Thank you. So my name is Carrie Rochelle. I am currently at Lindenwood University. I've been here for about 2 years. I am the Associate Vice President of Campus Enrollment Experience. So what that means is not only enrollment, it's pretty much anything that the new students will experience throughout their initial process with Lindenwood. I've been in higher education as well as a little bit of K through 12 for about 15 years. I've lived in 6 states, so I've traveled a lot for my career. And we have an amazing team here that we have just been able to break a few records over the past few years. And we're excited to continue to move forward with that new process and procedures. And I'm originally from Louisiana.
Nice. Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it. Take it away, Kari, please.
Hey, nice to meet you all. My name is Kari Costello. I'm the Assistant Vice President of International Admission and Recruitment at DePaul University. DePaul is located in Chicago, Illinois. For those of you who have not heard of it, we're the largest Catholic private institution in the United States. And I've been there now for 13 years. I've been a student at DePaul. I've been a staff member at DePaul. I've been a faculty member at DePaul, and now I'm even an alum of DePaul. So I know the institution very, very well and love it. My current role, I oversee the international marketing, recruitment, and admission functions for both the graduate and undergraduate levels, as well as our English Language Academy. It is a bit of a newer role for me. I've only been in the position for 5 or 6 months now. And prior to that, I was leading our global engagement division, also working with international students, our study abroad students, our English Language Academy students, and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, lots of different roles within the same institution, but excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, you know it inside and out, DePaul University, but also, education. So that's great to hear. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Adam, please give us your best intro. I know you're great, so I'd love the audience members to know who they're dealing with today.
Sure, thank you. My name is Adam Beckendorf. I'm the Director of Graduate and Undergraduate Enrollment here at Lindenwood. Lindenwood University is just west of St. Louis in Missouri. I am an alum of the university, but also have all of my higher ed experience, just under 10 years from Lindenwood as well, primarily in undergrad domestic admissions. And then recently in the past month and a half, have transitioned into both the undergrad and graduate domestic and international realms. So learning a lot about the international and graduate side, but have just under 10 years of experience. And in that time, seen a very big shift in a lot of what we're going to be talking today. So I'm excited to share some of those insights and excited to be on the panel.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I'm already thinking about questions I'm going to ask the panelists with regards to targeted communication. You mentioned international grad, like these are different segments. So I'm sure there's more of a targeted, customized message, but we'll get into that eventually, I'm sure. So again, we're going to dig right in here. And folks, if you want to let us know where you're calling from or where you're listening from, I'm in El Paso, Texas, my hometown. And so I'm in Mountain Time Zone. Most folks don't know this part of Texas is in Mountain as opposed to Central. So welcome any Texans that are on here. Today, folks, we're going to talk about understanding the impact of a targeted communication on student decisions. So if that resonates with anybody on that's listening here today, any of our attendees, and you have a question, please feel free to put that in the chat. Analyzing student behavior in response to targeted communication. And so what I think of, I've been a student, with my bachelor's degree, let's say, but I'm also a consumer, and I think that way as well. Like I see the targeted ads for everybody that wants me to buy the next product, whether it be for, let's say, Sephora, whatever it is, they have a strategy as well. So analyzing that student behavior to help you better respond for that targeted communication, that's something we're going to cover today. Learning to craft effective messages for diverse student preferences. Back to that point that I made earlier, that international, that undergrad, the graduate, they're all different in different phases of their career. So how do you craft those effective messages? Our panelists will share their insights today. Embracing the power of multi-channel engagement tactics. Can't wait to dig deep into this one because that definitely is a question that comes up as I talk to not just our current customers, but folks just like the panelists that we have today in those positions that are trying to find what's the best source. Where are these students coming from and how to engage differently with them. And then enhancing enrollment outcomes with data analytics. So we're going to jump right in. And Reshma, if you can get into that next slide. So with regards to our first topic, and again, I want to keep it really conversational, Adam, Carrie, Kari, as well as with anybody that might have some feedback. I want to start with discovering the influence of targeted communication. So I'll let, again, anybody who has that first thought, what surprising insights have you discovered about the influence of targeted communication? And how have they reshaped your approach to student engagement?
Yeah, so I'm happy to kick things off. I kind of mentioned it in my intro, but I think that targeted communication, it's first really important to note that how much it's evolved just in the past couple of years and the past decade that I've been involved in higher ed. And even before that, when I was going through higher ed, and I was getting all of those emails, mailers, and things as well. So it's always interesting to see how that progresses. And I think that cycle is speeding up every year, every few years. We're seeing that shift in focus from the consumer, kind of quickening pace. So it's interesting to try and keep up with that. But to me, three things came to mind with that. Micro-targeting, specifically. So being able to ensure that your content is personalized and relevant to the student population that you're targeting. Strategic nudges, what's the modality that's best for that? When are those best? How are you getting in front of those students to really make that the most effective? And then multi-channel consistency to ensure that what you're doing across all these platforms makes sense. But, I think as we look at how it's evolved, it's not just including the student's name in the email anymore. When I first started an enrollment, it was like, okay, well, these are going to be large email campaigns. So let's make sure that we use their first name. And then let's make sure we use their preferred name. And now well, that's not going to cut it. We have to dig deeper. We have to look at what that background is of the student. How can we engage them on a different level? Lindenwood, we're a four-year private institution. We have about 2,700 incoming students every year. And we have the ability and support from across campus to be able to tailor our messages from within our office, but also we have the support of faculty and other departments to be able to do individualized outreach. So for us, we have the ability to say, okay, you're an incoming arts major. So a faculty member is going to have an email that is going to be able to be sent to you that provides their contact information, engages on that specific level. And we feel like that's really helped and reshaped and influenced in a lot of that targeting. Of course, you have coaches and athletics consideration, academics for those higher achieving for Honors Academy, higher level scholarships, and of course that student ambassador touch point. We're lucky to have an amazing student ambassador team that is able to support our department and support the events that we offer. And they have incredible organic social media content. They assist us with phone calls, so more of that organic outreach from a student's perspective, as well as we are lucky enough to be able to provide individualized tours for every family that comes to campus instead of group tours. So we can pair those incoming students with with a student ambassador that might be in the program that incoming student is pursuing. So there's a lot of ways that you can tailor it both on the communication side, event side, and really target those students to engage with them on a deeper level.
Wow. I'm taking notes as well because there's so much to learn here today. Thank you so much. And one of the things that stood out to me was strategic nudges. And again, I feel them now from, when I go on to Southwest Airlines and they're like, hey, do you still want to go to Colorado? Or, like they know what I'm doing. And so how do you follow up to make sure that I can, complete that action? And in this case, take that next step for that student. So I definitely want to get Carrie and Kari's feedback, if any, on this topic as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Go
ahead, Kari.
So, yeah, I agree with everything that Adam was talking about. At DePaul, we are newer to the enrollment management space, the international team is. And so a lot of the things that Adam was talking about have already been happening on the domestic side. So now we're trying to figure out how to take a lot of those same strategies and adapt them for an international market. So yeah, the strategic nudges are critical, and thinking about where students are at what point of the admission funnel, right? And what kind of content are we giving them? How are we trying to reach them? And I think the original question that we got had something to do with what were we surprised about and how has that shaped kind of our strategies a little bit? For me, it was fairly surprising to learn that email is still an effective channel. I had assumed that students had moved on to social media and other things like that, and they're doing that as well. But with the right kind of strategic marketing and strategic communications, using their first name, using their program that they've applied to, using other details, using your data effectively, to show them that you are writing to them personally, we actually have quite high click-through rates through our email campaigns. And so that's something that was surprising for me. Now we're trying to figure out how to take it to that next level to really adapt to the international markets.
And it's going to take some trial and error, but failing quickly, right? With international,
Absolutely.
just like know what direction to take. So getting that data as well. We'll get into that part, later in our programming today. But Carrie, would love your feedback as well. I know you got some gold nuggets in there that you're gonna give out today for free.
Well, just to add on to kind of what Adam and Kari mentioned, at Lindenwood, we had to take more of a deeper evaluation of our enrollment processes and procedures because of all the changes that's occurring with the market, everything that's happening with students, the type of students are evolving, their expectations are different than what they were years ago. Students these days are aware of the financial commitment to going to school. And especially after COVID, they want a more personal approach. As Kari mentioned, they want to know that you are speaking directly to them. So a lot of universities, from my experience, would sit back and kind of wait for students to come, right? We're a university. We've been around for 200 years. They're going to come. Well, that's changing. We have all seen a decline in enrollment over the past couple years. So we took a more aggressive approach, or assertive approach, I would say. We created a contact cadence that puts the outreach at the beginning of the engagement with the student. So as soon as an application comes through, the reps are quickly calling them, they're texting them, leaving a voicemail, reaching out with email. We have a contact cadence that flows over 90 days. So it helps push that student through the enrollment process. We've created additional events on campus to get them involved with the campus, a sense of community, a sense of involvement. And all of those things have just helped kind of target, keep our target market where we want it to be. We have a very specific value proposition that we're trying to put in front of the students, the student types, regardless if they're undergrad, graduate, online, international, we have them all here. So if we can just make sure that we are keeping the message clear and more personalized, I feel like that's how we've seen a growth in enrollment at Lindenwood, because we're more intentional with our outreach instead of just the same message goes to each group. We have a different email communication plan for each additional segment here throughout each different lead stage, which just helps, like I said, make it a little more personal and push them through that process, kind of hand-holding, but not overbearing, so that they don't feel like we are just a salesperson, because students are customers, just like you mentioned, Violet, you're a customer as well as a student. So you have to be able to put those two factors together. And if you can combine those, then you could see a successful enrollment kind of email campaign, in my opinion.
That's amazing. You brought to mind the hand-holding. So my best friend wants to go back and finish her bachelor's. She's a single mom now, so she might need some hand-holding. And the original university she went to, I think, was that mindset, like, hey, we've been around forever. You're going to come when you're ready. But I actually told her, hey, look at, the Lindenwoods, the DePauls, like these, so I won't mention names, but she needs a different marketing or targeted communication strategy. Again, she's in a different phase of life. So how do you get those students who are eager to finish their degree, to continue their education? So all great points. Thank you so much. I do want to skip over to the poll question. I want to get a sense for what our audience is thinking. So Reshma, if you can lead me into the poll question number 1. So again, we're talking about discovering the influence of targeted communication. So what aspect of targeted communication do you believe has the most significant influence on student decision-making? So is it personalized content? We heard that now. Timing and frequency, channel selection, and message clarity and relevance. And I'm surprised there's not all of the above, right? That's how we pass tests. At least I did sometimes. But it looks like you can only pick one. Pick your best option, or what you want us to start talking about next as well. Give you a few seconds to answer that, and then we'll get the results. All right, so we have our results here. Looks like personalized content came in at number 1, followed by message clarity and relevance, and then timing and frequency. Nobody picked channel selection. Okay, that's interesting. I see that as like, okay, so somebody mentioned, like, let's say email. You're surprised, right, Kari, that email still works? Because I still, I think I do see messages on Facebook or, Instagram. So that comes up. So I'd love to talk about, is that surprising? Probably not. I mean, there's many ways to skin a cat. This just so happens to be that, the students are looking for that targeted, personalized, and also the timing, because, Kari, you mentioned international. So maybe the time when that message goes out, maybe the time when we're reaching out to that student is going to matter. I tend to do everything that I want to follow up with before I get started with work, you know? So if I get a chance to return a call, return a text, reply to an email, it's typically before work, maybe my lunchtime and maybe after work, you know? So we'll get going with the next question. So again, I'll leave it to our panel. If anybody's, what is it, the light bulb goes on and you have some insights into student behavior. So in your experience, what communication channels, since that actually got us a 0, what communication channels have you have shown the highest impact on student engagement and decision making? Anybody would like to take that, Akari?
I can maybe start with this one because you were just talking about communicating with an international audience, which is different, right? One thing we've noticed is that the channel changes based on where they are in the admission funnel, right? So if we're talking about just building awareness, right, we're starting to use like digital advertising and that sort of thing to, build more awareness. We also are very fortunate to have strong word of mouth. We have a really good alumni population, really great high school counselor network internationally, agents that we work with, other university partners that we work with. A lot of parents are now like trying to send their kids, which is fantastic. So that tends to be really, really positive communication for us. Other things that I would say are probably unique for the international market, everybody's on WhatsApp now. Everywhere you go, everybody's like, send me a WhatsApp, right? So all of our students want to communicate on WhatsApp. We actually have one staff member who is based in India because that's our largest sending population right now. And that person, once students are admitted, creates a WhatsApp group and is available pretty much 24/7, constantly responding to any random question the students come up with, real time, in their time zone, right on it, right? And that's what they want, and that's what they expect. They have a question about their visa, boom, they get an answer. They have a question about something with the application, she's on it, right? So that for us has been a major game changer in terms of communication. It's tricky though, because it's organic, right? So it's difficult to track that kind of communication. So when you're thinking about your strategy and how to build that, sometimes, that lack of data for like, who's really using it, who's engaging, who's not, what are the profile of those students, we don't have that level of sophisticated analytics yet, but I'm hopeful that we'll get there.
Cool. I just made me think, I deal with also customers that are not in the US, so WhatsApp is a channel that students are going to respond through there more than texting or email. So maybe we can talk later. I can show how we might be able to help. But yeah, because you do want to know that data, right? So it's important to know what's working, what's not working. How, are they responding? Both ends, your rep and then the students, and how fast. And the faster they get answers, the faster you move them along, right? I mean, we have our attention spans that are, everybody's trying to get our attention. So if we can get that answer and move to the next step, next stage, you're going to have a successful student journey from the moment they inquire to past graduation into alumni, like you mentioned, which brings in those extra referrals and so on. So any feedback from Adam and Carrie, on what your experience with regards to those communication channels have shown you with regards to decision making?
Yeah. And, Kari brought up a great point, regarding emails and the WhatsApp, because, it is a very different targeted communication, and especially different channels when you're looking at international versus domestic students. So one of the things that I'll touch on, at least in this response, is more so on the domestic side, because Kari did an amazing job on the international side, is phone calls for us are really, we've seen an incredible yield rate from these phone call outreach that we've put into our communication cadences, including those in our different channels we're using. And it's always interesting too, because having been in higher ed for 10 years, there's kind of a stigma around phone calls, especially with first-year students. And we're trying to blow up that stigma as best we can, because we were really purposeful, when we started including that in a year and a half or so ago into this contact cadence. It is phone call intention. We are intentional with our phone call outreach with all of our students that are coming through, because there's only so much that an email or a text can convey. And when you're trying to build that emotional connection, when you're trying to build that value and relationship with that student, there's been so many times students I'm working with, students that the enrollment reps are working with, they'll respond to texts that enrollment reps have sent out saying, this is a chat bot, this isn't real. And we're like, no, I'm actually a real human, and it's real language, but AI complicates things, in today's world. So being very intentional with those phone calls, especially with more important conversations. Your initial app submission, your admittance, congratulations. There's only so much bright sparkles in an email can convey with that excitement. And of course, those financial conversations and kind of keeping them engaged over those summer months are really, really important. The other piece for communication channels is kind of a different point that we've started to do is involving their support people in that admissions process.
Oh, wow.
So when we are working with incoming students, whether they're during a campus tour or whether they apply, we gather their support information. So whether that's a parent or if maybe they're a non-traditional student, and they say, I don't know who my support person would be. We ask them, who's the first person you're going to call when you get that admittance letter? And usually that yields some sort of result of the person that they trust or want to share that with, because that support person is going to be guiding them on that journey almost as much as we are in a lot of different ways. And so, if it's a traditional incoming first-year student, a lot of times it's the parent, and that's great. But we intentionally include that support person in specifically in our contact cadence on day 6. So, on day 6, we have an email that goes to that support person to introduce ourselves and to kind of give them an insight into what's going on and allow them to kind of go along that journey with that student. And we've seen a lot of great success with that. And it helps that student feel more supported. It helps everyone kind of feel more part of that team as you're guiding them through that overall process.
Wow.
Can I ask a question? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead. No, go ahead, Kari. Go
I
ahead.
was curious. Adam mentioned artificial intelligence. I'm wondering if Carrie and Adam, you guys have explored using artificial intelligence yet?
We have explored it, yes. Have we pulled the trigger on it? No, it's kind of scary. We're trying to make it our own. I think leveraging just even some of the Chat GPT brain power out there has been influential on the back end to help brainstorm and just kind of get a fresh artificial perspective on things. But when you're only one person, right? And so when you can use the whole World Wide Web and resources that are out there to make sure you're not missing something or just run that idea past someone that might have a different perspective. A lot of times we get into our bubbles within our departments, our university, our region, and there's more to the discussion from just that bubble. And so it's about thinking about all aspects. And I think AI really is going to be a good tool for that. Just haven't found exactly which tool yet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, Kari, I was curious too, but I was like, oh, do I want to? AI it's a whole nother animal. But to Adam's point, getting out of your bubble, which is what our participants, myself, just talking to folks from different perspectives is going to really get us. It's like manufactured AI. What we're doing here, it's getting that input from other avenues and experiences. Carrie, I thought you had some input as well.
Absolutely. Just to kind of add to what Adam and Kari said, honestly, with the different channels, we use all of them, as we mentioned. I mean, in person, on the phone, text, email. I honestly feel like all of them are useful and helpful depending on this part of the process the student is currently in. But I'm going to agree with Adam. I think phone calls and in person is our most powerful channel. If you can get them in to the campus environment, if you can get them on a Zoom or a Teams call, it's that more personal approach. On top of the very personal contact cadence for each different community of student, whether it's undergrad, international, graduate, doesn't matter. We have specific questions that we have created to identify the value and the need of that particular student, if I could speak today, so that we can try to make sure that we're aligning what we have at Lindenwood with what the students are looking for. So if we can use the right channel to get them engaged, whether it's on the phone or in person, I feel like that is what we see is the most effective. We even created an application station right in the enrollment area so that if the student and the parent are here or that support person are actually present, we can talk them through the entire process within the 2 hours, give them the individualized tour, show them what Lindenwood has, and then also help guide them through that application process. So I think the most important channel that you can use in any enrollment experience is get them on the phone, get them in person, identify their needs and their wants. And then at that point, you can really address why your university would be the best university for the student.
I like that you mentioned aligning with Lindenwood, aligning, because that's a huge deal to get them through the finish line. I am curious, Adam, are you all also sending like text and email, like have a cadence or nurture cadence with the support person? Or is it just that, or is that phone call that, again, you got them involved at the beginning, or how is that cadence? If you want to share, I know this is the secret sauce, for what you guys have going on.
So yeah, we do have an email cadence that is built in separate from kind of the enrollment reps front-facing contact cadence. So that's kind of your safeguard. Those are those university branded, I don't want to say generic ones, but they're obviously not going to be as personalized as an individual email that a rep is going to be sending.
Right.
But it does provide safeguards and does provide those constant touch points to ensure that the student never is unsure of what those next steps are. With that, we do also have texting options and campaigns that we do. We like to leverage texting more on a personalized basis. So our enrollment reps lean very heavily into the texting because students can, they'll answer their phone in a class for better or worse, but they do tend to be very responsive in text as well. So it's good for those quick updates. Hey, I'm still needing a transcript. What we don't do is we don't do the novels in the text because then that's going to deter those students. And then I believe there was a third part to your question. If I can
Yeah, I think it was like, so I wanted to get a glimpse of what, you're involving the support person, the support
people,
family.
yes.
And I would, you said, hey, at the beginning, but maybe like, who would you have be at your graduation? Anyway, that's how I see, like, I want to see them see long-term, like, who are you invited to the graduation party? But yeah, so speak to that.
Yeah, to answer that part of it, we leverage it for sure on day 6 because that's a structured part of our contact cadence initially. But within our CRM, we have the ability to drag and drop in carbon copies for adding in not only to the student but also to mom or dad or their support person, whoever that might be. So usually we get a gauge of that by talking with that student earlier on, and we say, okay, like, how involved are they? So it's a lot of that's individualized and based off the student's intention. We just actually started with a new program. It's a third-party outside vendor that is providing content for those parent and support folks as well. That gives them constant newsletter opportunities and online platform, not specific necessarily to their student, but it helps guide them to, if they're a first-gen person, supporting their incoming student, it gives them an idea of, okay, what's that college process look like? What should they be thinking about? What type of communities exist in the higher ed world at Lindenwood? And gives them some of those updates so that they can also, by proxy, support their student that's going through that enrollment process.
Great point, because if they don't know what that next step, I was a first generation college graduate, and so my parents only knew so much. They just knew they had to get me to graduate, but what's the next step? So that's an amazing point that you all are hiring a third party vendor for that. And so
Violet, I can
I'm gonna
actually add to that. if you don't
Yes,
mind.
please.
So
Yes,
I was
please.
going to go over that. So Adam, thank you for that intro with it. So yes, it's a third party that we can also segment specific communities. So we have one platform for first year freshmen. We have one platform for transfer. We have one platform for international. And the company actually kind of creates the content. They pull from our website, and then we have an individual identified to approve the messages. And then within that platform, the parents can actually post their questions. So it's to encourage them to not get away from Facebook posting, right? But bring them to the centralized post so that if there is a concern or something that they're uncertain about, we can identify it and respond to it right there on that platform. So we took the initial design of our including contact support as well as families to where can we take it to the next step. And so that platform was one that we identified that we wanted to adopt and welcome to the university. So I'm excited about it.
Nice. That's great. Just so targeted. Like it doesn't get more targeted than that. So that's a great end. Thank you for sharing with that. I'm sure that's going to help some of our audience members. And I'm going to get to poll question number 2, but then I'm going to ask one of the questions that looks like Izzy is asking. But Reshma, if I can get us to do that poll question number 2. It's coming. How about, okay, there we go. Okay, so insights into student behavior. Which communication channel do you think has the most impact on influencing student decisions in today's digital landscape? Is it email, social media, text messages? Other mention in the comments, please. Go ahead and enter your answer. And this has a lot to do with data, right? Like Kari, you mentioned like, so what do we focus on? And also I'm sure the question isn't asking like my whatever generation I belong to. I'm like on the cusp of 2 generations. So, like what, and it could also be what time of day I feel like, and did you catch me in a good mood? So how do I prefer to be communicated with? I like that Adam said phone calls, because I like, even if I know I'm not going to answer the phone, I like hearing that voice and that voice message. And even if it's just like someone saying, hello, hey, I'll follow up with you later. I think that has a huge impact. So I'm glad Adam mentioned that, that phone call is a part of the cadence, the strategy. So it looks like social media has won today at 67%, followed by email and text messages. So social media, nice. Okay. And actually, let me see. So we can, I'll leave it to the panelists if they want to answer this question now or offsite. But Izzy is asking, do any of the panelists do phone campaigns for overseas markets? If so, what time and which staff is involved? And also, what stage of the funnel do the phone campaigns happen? Like at the application stage, they've been admitted, they've done their financial or deposit.
So I can address, there's 2 questions that are specific to international that I can maybe speak to and then let my colleagues jump in. Regarding phone calls. So we actually did a bit of an experiment a few years back, and we tried to recruit students, not recruiting for enrollment, but recruit our current students to help us do a phone campaign to newly admitted students. So calling kids from their home country to speak in their native language and reach out to them to congratulate them, welcome them to DePaul, answer questions, the whole thing. So we had student volunteers, we had staff members from our global engagement division, including like study abroad advisors, faculty who, were from different countries that had native language skills, and just about everybody we could pull. And, we gave everybody access to international calling and gave them the list and let them have at it. It was a little bit of a hodgepodge of results, quite honestly. There were some cultures where getting a phone call from a person overseas was a little bit startling. And they weren't quite expecting it. Right. It did help if they actually talked to somebody live in their native language and they could say, oh, I'm from China and just wanted to let you know, here's my experience, and to be able to talk students through it. So when the connections were made, I think the conversations were really good, but a lot of times we had misconnections. So we tried it for a couple of years. We had no budget to do it. So it was like a very much a grassroots kind of initiative. It was fun. We tried to make a contest out of it to see how many people you could reach and all that sort of thing. But honestly, we decided to end that after a couple of tries just because the results were so mixed. So we did give it a try. It sounds like there are definitely vendors out there and other organizations that can help do that, which is something that, potentially we could explore. But we did initiate, there's a product, a vendor called Unibuddy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's a peer-to-peer platform. And again, it's like 24/7. And so students can chat with students who are advisors, or we call them global DePaul ambassadors. We pay them a little stipend, and then they respond to messages through Unibuddy real time. So that's probably a more effective way to do it, because again, like if a student on the other part of the globe is thinking about, oh my gosh, what do I need to do to get my I-20 and get my visa secured? Where the heck do I live in a city like Chicago, right? They think of those things in the middle of the night. They ping somebody, and guess what? They get a response. So I think that's been more effective for us, and a little bit easier to manage, quite honestly, than rounding it, trying to rustle up volunteers and like make international phone calls. And that was a little bit of a disaster, but it was fun.
But you tried it, and
yes, we tried it.
Yeah.
We tried it, yeah. And then there's one more question about international applicants flying to campus in person. So we unfortunately don't have funds to sponsor fly-ins. I would love it if we could. But we do often get students who come in the summertime. There's surprisingly a lot of foreign prospective students who have an aunt in Chicago, or an uncle in Chicago, or a cousin's friend in Chicago. And it's a fun place to visit. So a lot of times we get students who visit the city, visit their family or relatives or friends, and then come to campus for a visit. So we're always delighted when that happens, but it depends on the students' travel. But we do, there's an event that happens in the States every year called IACAC. I don't know if that's familiar with you. Okay. And so international high school counselors from all over the globe come to wherever the conference is. And we do a fly-in for the counselors. So every summer we bring about 20 or 30 high school counselors from the IACAC, fly them into Chicago. We partner with the other Chicagoland schools. So we work with Northwestern and Loyola and UIC and U Chicago and all of our partners and friends. And, we send the counselors around for sort of like a fam tour in the Chicago area. So that's always really fun to have the international high school counselors on campus.
Yeah, and until you have the funds for programs like that, that's a good alternative. Or like you said, they'll find a way, right? They'll find a cousin of a cousin. I know I have a cousin of a cousin that lives in just about every major city, and they will let me, stay in their couch. So yeah, thank you so much for answering those questions that Izzy asked. I want to move on to this question. How can institutions balance the need for immediate results with the long-term goal of boosting enrollment yield? And that's something I'm sure on the minds of many. Yeah, I mean, there's only so much your teams can do, and technology will help you. But how do you fill up your classes more efficiently, but also look to the long term? As you are planning into the next decade.
I could take this or start with it. I think that it's always a constant juggling act. There's never a downtime in enrollment management. And so you always have to be looking at what's currently happening, the next term, and, especially on the domestic undergrad side, a lot of that in the first year side goes to name buying. And so name buying, you're buying names 2-3 years, sometimes even longer in advance. So there's a natural long game there, and you have to be focused on that if you want to be successful, because students are starting that college journey sophomore, junior year. And if you're not in front of them, you're going to be missing out on that exposure. So, it is always interesting though, because you have to be careful with that content. It has to be very general, introductory style, because As much as you want to prep for what happens long term in the future, you can never prep for things like the FAFSA blow up that happened over the past few months, and understanding how much that can influence a cycle for admissions. And so you plan, and then you have to pivot, and then you plan and you have to pivot. But I think that at the end of the day, you have to build a strong team for the enrollment rep side to be able to focus on kind of what's your main priority, what's that application funnel looking like for the immediate future, and then you have to have the leadership side to be able to be focusing on name buys, revamping communication constantly to ensure that it's relevant, updating marketing items, all of those resources that enrollment reps and prospective students are utilizing. All of that becomes super important. But if you're only focused on the current, you're never going to be on time with all the other things. So it is definitely a balancing act of looking 6, 12 months, sometimes even further ahead, but also being very present in the moment.
Balancing, revamping, like staying on top of it. I mean, and trying and pivoting when, things come up, come across your way that you weren't planning, or you were hoping that wouldn't happen. So I want to ask this next question, because I know we're going to come to the end of our time, but just in case anybody can give us some feedback on, so what are the key elements of a message that resonates with diverse student preferences and populations? So we already got a feel for, what you all were saying about, hey, so, we have our undergrad and maybe just new incoming, first generation, so there's such diversity. I mean, there's probably 10,000 categories of people, but let's slim it down to a few. If anybody, any of our panelists can speak to those elements, to that message that resonates, that gets that student to say, you know what? Yes, let me take that phone call. Let me reply to that email. Let me have a conversation.
I could do it at a few bullet points. You have to make sure you're using inclusive language that's going to resonate with the targeted audience. Personalize and tailor the message to the needs of that audience. You want to also find the right channels to deliver the message that will make sure they actually receive the message. And then you want to make sure the message is clear, concise, to the point, and have a very specific call to action. That's my kind of quick bullet points on that.
Nice. Call to action. You can't do anything without that call to action and then that follow-up, right?
Correct.
I think the only thing I could add, that's a great answer. I think the only thing I would add to that is, especially with the international student population, words matter, right? And we're like the largest Catholic private institution, and there are parts of the world where that's an affinity builder, right? People feel like connected to it because their home country or their home religion is similar, and they feel very comforted by that. But there's other parts of the world where it might confuse students. Like, what does that mean? Do I have to be Catholic to go there? And that sort of thing. And that's when you really have to think about how you're fine-tuning your messaging, right? And to talk about more like your mission and values rather than the Catholic label, right? So choosing the words that will resonate with the right student audiences. And each culture, each country is different, right? So we're still fine-tuning. We're not good at it yet. We're getting better and better, but we try to get feedback from our students. We do concept testing with our students and focus groups and that sort of thing to like learn from them what the words are and what the messages are that they want to hear.
Great point. Like the world, who knows what the world would look like if we actually understood each other the first time around and we didn't assume, and because you're right, when we're dealing with just people from all parts of the world, I continue to remind myself that, I like that Adam said, not staying in my bubble means that just asking further, like, am I understanding what you're saying with the way I use certain words? So thanks for adding that point, and thanks, Carrie, as well for adding your nuggets here. I do have one more poll question I want to pull up here. Reshma, if we can get into poll question number 3 and get our audience members to answer. Okay, so this is tackling the enrollment cliff. So in addressing enrollment challenges, what do you believe is more crucial for success? So quick decision-making and adaptability, we've already heard some of that. Long-term strategic planning, heard that too, thanks to Adam, and balance, or a balanced combination of both. So there is a wrong answer. I'm kidding. No, there's no right, no wrong answer. But how do you do it all? So we'll let the audience members answer, and then we'll get our display our answer. And I do thanks Izzy for bringing on your questions on the to the panel here. So if we get to them on time, we will. I think we have enough time to answer your questions, but I do want to get through a couple of the questions we prepared for, just in case some of our audience members also are wondering about this. And then Reshma, can you get us that answer on here? Yeah, combination of both. So that makes sense. I mean, again, Adam, the ladies, Carrie, Kari, you've spoken to this. And I would say, you know, and you've already mentioned, like, having that data, although, you know, data can only tell you so much. Technology is great. And then humans come into the picture. So that throws a wrench in the data, I think, because as much as we'd like to be able to predict, that'll always work. But you know, just being on top of it. I know you all are doing a great job with being able to pivot with anything that comes with higher education. So I'm going to go to our next question, and then Izzy, I'll look at those questions at the end. So what challenges might arise when managing a multi-channel strategy, and how can they be mitigated? So again, and actually, let me follow up with this. If you can provide some examples of your institution using multi-channel approaches to amplify the impact of those communication efforts.
So I can maybe start, you know, the international markets are really volatile, right? There's a lot of ebbs and flows. Like just a couple of years ago, China was our biggest sending country. We had so many Chinese students, and then all of a sudden, like fell off the cliff, right? And now India has exploded. So when we're thinking about trying to balance the short term and long term, there's part of it where there's a hot market. You need to take advantage as much as you can. Take advantage doesn't sound right, but to leverage that as best you can, but then also be looking at developing markets, right? So even though India is really hot right now, we're spending a certain percentage of our time trying to recruit there, but then also looking at exploratory markets and trying to really make sure that we're covering our bases so that, you know, if that tap turns off in India, you know, something changes, currency crashes or political climate changes, you know, anything could happen. We need to have a backup plan. So we try to do, you know, 60, 70% of our efforts on markets that we know we already have a brand established. We know we have a good pipeline. We have good relationships in place. We know the markets well, and then spending the rest of that time researching what are the next up and coming markets. Never know though. things change quickly.
So, when do you sleep is the question, if that's the case, because yeah, and that goes for any business, but when it comes to students, again, we're dealing, the product per se is a human. It's somebody who is going, you know, to enroll for a number of reasons. And, you know, whether again, first generation or, hey, this is just the first step into my journey, into my PhD, or so they all have their different reasons. But again, the student and having that good result, a 5-star review for DePaul, a 5-star review for Lindenwood, and, you know, and whatever university they go to, it impacts not just them, but their generations, right? Their family. It has that butterfly effect. Your take, Carrie and Adam, on this question, or we can move on to the next one. I know, again, we're at 5-minute mark. Oh my gosh, I thought we were gonna not have enough questions.
I'll provide a quick take on it, just from a different perspective. So, you know, when you ask that question of managing multi-channel strategies and kind of some challenges, mitigation, my mind went first to ensuring that everything is aligned, because you can have channel overload and you can muddy up your communication real quick if you don't have everything mapped out and a clear understanding of what vendors are helping you in what areas, at what times, and with what data. And not only that, but making sure your data is also accurate, that is being supplied back and forth, because we all work with all of these data transfers, and hopefully institutions, you know, that are leveraging that have someone very knowledgeable in that role, because it can get complicated very quick. And the last thing you want to do is push deposit communication to not admitted students, or, you know, any subset that doesn't match. So I think that that's super important. also, when managing that many different channels, making sure that you have a gauge of your analytics is super important, because that's going to give you the value of those channels. And if you're spending the time and effort on intentionally using, which everything should be intentional, but if you're using multi-channels, you have to know what's working, why it's working, and be able to take time to understand those analytics. And that's not always easy to step away and do that. But when you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on these different platforms, that investment's definitely worth that time.
You segued into the next question with what role does predictive analytics play in anticipating those addressing the enrollment challenges? And Carrie, I'll let you just give us anything you can leave the webinar, leave us with, because we're almost out of time. And Izzy, I'm going to recommend, actually, let me have Carrie answer that question, and then we'll finish off. We'll end us here.
The biggest thing that I can just leave with, I know we're at the end, is know your business. Understand, like Adam mentioned, you have to be able to pull your data when you need your data at all times, be able to analyze it, know what's going out to your students. Because if you're not aware of what's going out, when it's going out, how it's going out, what's your results coming, like what is it producing for you? We had to do a deep dive at Lindenwood and actually spend several months and kind of pulling from everywhere that we had our hands in, because we did have new leadership come in and we weren't aware of what was coming in, what was going out. So I think the biggest thing is make sure you identify any trends in the data, what is working, what's not working, and then from there continue to change your processes and your approach, I would say, because as your poll said, is you have to be able to bend and move and be flexible at the same time, but you also want to look at long-term commitments. So I think the best thing is to know your data and then be able to analyze it in a way that will just give you the results that you need at the end.
That's great. That gives you that. I picture it's one of those movies. I think it's Tom Cruise, where he's like, you see everything, and it would be amazing if we could all go into an organization and see everything, so that like, hey, there's a gap there, but obviously you have a big team, or hopefully at least even our attendees have a team that they can work with, where they all come together and find out where those gaps are and what needs to get immediate attention, and maybe again plan for the what ifs for the future. So we're at 2 minutes before we end the webinar. What I'm going to recommend, because I do see, thanks Izzy for participating in our, and asking some questions. So if you don't mind, the panelists, if folks can follow you on LinkedIn, maybe connect with you, they can always follow up. I think you guys are amazing experts, everybody, the ladies here on the panel. I have even more questions for you all that you brought to mind. So I know you have a lot of information to share, but thank you so much for giving us this hour. And for the attendees that came today, I would say again, follow these folks on LinkedIn. They always have great things to say, but they're on a different journey than all of us are. But I think we can help each other with the information and the knowledge we're acquiring to be able to better help again that next generation of students. So with that, again, thank you so much, Izzy. I will leave you to make sure you follow up with the panelists. I know you have a question here for Adam. And then a final question. Again, if you have it specifically to somebody on the panel, feel free to reach out to them. And feel free to reach out to us. Again, we're here to help everybody that attended. We thank you so much. Okay, so what's today? The day after Valentine's, I think, can still be celebrated later. So we love you guys. Thank you so much. And I'm going to let you go now. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Kari.
Thank you so much.